Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Needy No More, the podcast dedicated to healing the anxious attachment style. I'm your host, anxious attachment style coach and author, Chris Ratcliffe. I've helped thousands of people across 6 continents to end the cycle of anxious attachment through my books, workshops, digital downloads, and coaching program. I'm excited to carry on that mission here on the podcast, sharing tools and techniques, principles and practices for you to explore on your journey to growing more secure. Welcome back, everyone. I know it's been a few weeks. I'm excited to share another guest interview with y'all. We have Valerie Rubin here today. Valerie is a relationship and anxiety therapist who helps people heal their anxious attachment style so they can finally experience relationships rooted in calm, trust, and emotional safety. She's the founder of Freedom from Anxious Attachment Blueprint, her signature one-on-one program that guides women through healing fear of abandonment, inner child wounds, and self-worth struggles. Not just intellectually, but somatically, so their bodies can finally believe they're safe to love and be loved. Valerie is also the host of the Anxiety Recovery Podcast, ranked in the top 15% of podcasts globally, where she interviews leading experts in trauma, attachment, and emotional healing. Through her work, she's helped thousands of listeners and clients understand that love is not a source of anxiety, but a sanctuary of safety. Valerie, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on, Chris. For those who don't know, Chris was on my podcast and we talked all about emotional safety and how to really utilize that when you're healing anxious attachment. Highly recommend getting into that one if you haven't listened to that one already with Chris. It was amazing.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to mention that too. I can link that in the show notes for folks so they can check that out. I know you and I, before we hopped on, we were talking about, what we want to cover today, and the topic of breaking free from dating emotionally unavailable folks came up. This is such a big one that I've been wanting to cover on the show, so I'm glad that we identified that as something to discuss. I think a good place to start, though, would be just to kind of define emotional unavailability. What do you think emotional unavailability means? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, that is a really great question because a lot of people might see emotional unavailability as this huge overarching thing, but it's really like I define it as someone who is inconsistent, maybe someone who is showing mixed signals, someone who is just their heart is not fully open. And a lot of anxious attachers, and this is coming from myself, who I used to blame and poke and point at people who would lean more avoidantly attached, when in reality, I myself was very emotionally unavailable. But with anxious attachers, they're hyper available, meaning they're very focused on the other and we're self-abandoning. We're not actually sharing our needs, sharing our truth, sharing what we need, because we have those protector parts and fears of abandonment. And so we are equally as emotionally unavailable if you are in that state. And that's what I wish I could have heard. And it's that's why for me, I was consistently attracting emotionally unavailable partners. But this also could just look like they're physically not there. Like for me, in a previous relationship, I was dating someone who was long distance. I think it can be fabulous if it's short term or you've known someone for a while, but that's like a buffer where you can't fully be vulnerable. And if you've had emotionally unavailable parents, which if you're listening to this and you're anxiously attached or disorganized, I guarantee you that's been your life, like myself. And so that becomes our blueprint and our templating of what our nervous system feels safe with. So, that's just really, really big.
It really is. I mean, you mentioned so much there that I definitely want to dive deeper into today. I totally hear you, though, in terms of the physical distance, the emotional distance. There's almost this reluctance that as anxious attachers, obviously we're hypervigilant. We're always reading, into the room and into the environment around us. So we pick up on these cues, and sometimes they start really subtly, I think.
Yes.
someone taking a little bit longer to text us back than maybe they normally would. And I'm using air quotes for those listening. But
Mhm,
we tend to get to know someone, and when we do that, we're always monitoring how they're showing up. And even
mhm,
subtle shifts can cause insecurity within us and
mhm,
can make us even more hypervigilant about, well, is this person in this? Do they like
mhm,
me? And that really takes us out of our power, I think, because then we start focusing on them even more instead of asking ourselves, like, do I like this? Is this the kind of consistency that I need? Do I feel
mhm,
safe with this person? More often than not, safety isn't an absolute proposition. But I
mhm,
love what you're saying there. And I think reluctance is the word that just comes to mind for me when I think about this. It's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Will they or
mhm.
won't they? Are they ready? Because they're saying one thing and then their behavior is doing another.
Absolutely. And I want to add to the point of reluctance because I know we're so focused on emotionally unavailable relationships, but it's like a lot of people who are anxiously attached. And this was definitely me. And when I'm triggered, I can definitely notice that pattern like sizzling through a little. It's like that fear of being vulnerable, the fear of being seen. And so in these emotionally unavailable relationships, we don't actually have to open our hearts because they're not meeting us in that depth. Wondering when we're in these types of dynamics, I feel so unseen, but you're also not putting yourself out there in the way that you need. It's like, can you remove the masks, the I'm fine masks, the I'm holding it all together mask? Like, can you help yourself feel safe in showing and removing the masks? Like who you are underneath? Can you share with someone, hey, I'm really fucking struggling. I notice, even just noticing your patterns and being like, I notice a part of me wants to hide and not share this. I notice that you pulled away and that is giving me a lot of anxiety. Like, what's happening on your end? It's like for someone who's anxiously attached, they don't even want to share that because it feels so scary because it's unknown, because they never had to be fully vulnerable or fully seen. And so that can be what can perpetuate you in staying with these types of partners, not because you want to, it's just because we have something called neuroception. So, neuroception allows us to look into our memory bank and files of is what type of love is safe. And if we've had emotionally unavailable and neglectful parents, that's what our nervous system and our body deems as safe. So that is what our body in this neuroception, it's unconscious. So we can't just talk our way out of it and say, I'm just going to go for someone healthy and secure when your body is not feeling safe enough to do that and go there.
My goodness, there's a wealth of knowledge in what you just shared. I do think there, especially in early stages of dating, there's like, the fear of being too much. You don't want to be a burden.
Mhm,
You don't want to open up too quickly to someone and be like, hey, I'm feeling anxious about this. But
mhm,
actually, I encourage folks to do that. Like, you need to be
mhm,
real about how you're feeling, and
mhm,
expression is one antidote to anxiety because it's
mhm,
in the repression and the suppression of how you feel that causes anxiety because you're
mhm,
allowing for the pressure to build internally, and it always comes out in one way or another, likely in protest
mhm,
behavior. So it's way
mhm,
better for you to express how you're feeling in as
mhm,
clear and direct and as compassionately and as healthily as you can.
mhm,
But you're not a burden for having feelings and for wanting
mhm,
connection and consistency and communication. I mean, that's what makes relationships work. This whole
mhm,
idea of being a cool person, like easygoing, nonchalant, that's not what relationships are about. There is a way
mhm,
to go about it where you can talk about asking for more of what you want. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. You don't criticize your way to connection, it doesn't work. But if you say, like, hey, I'm hoping that we might be able to connect a little bit more often. I've really enjoyed our dates so far. I know we've been seeing each other roughly about once a week. What do you think about us maybe seeing each other twice a week next week? Great.
mhm,
Yeah, propose that. Always focus on more of what you want, but try to drop
mhm,
this mask. Try to not fall into the trap of being the cool guy or the cool girl or the cool person.
Mhm.
because you're only going to trap yourself if you do that. And you're going to feel that constrictive environment, that cage that you've built for yourself.
I'm so glad you brought this up, Chris. This mask of like this secure, no needs, cool girl or cool boy, someone who's chill, right? And that was definitely me in a previous relationship. And that's just like what kept me in it and bottled in it was because I wasn't actually sharing authentically what I wanted until it got to such a point where he was taking a lot of space. And then I was talking about this with my therapist, and she was saying, Valerie, that's a lot of space. Even someone who's not anxiously attached would feel anxious. And it's like when I started to share, like, hey, I would love to spend more time with you. Like, what are your thoughts on that? It can feel very terrifying to express yourself when you've been so used to playing this cool girl mask or chill mask. But by keeping you in that chill mask, you're never getting your needs met and you're always left feeling deprived. Like I remember at one point he was so pulled away that this is like so sad to say, but I looked up like, is emotional starvation like a term? Like, what is that?
Mm.
That was a few years ago, but it's just like, that's deeply, deeply sad. And it's like I was perpetuating that cycle just as much as he was. And that's what was protecting me from feeling that fear of abandonment. And for me, especially people who are anxiously attached, I've been sprinkling this and talking about it slightly more, is it triggers this pre-verbal wound of no one is coming. And this is why if they pull away, if they don't text you back as much or consistently as they typically do, it can really trigger deep terror. People are like, oh my God, I feel irrational. I feel crazy. But it's coming from a very, very young part from like 0 to 3 years old that was suppressed. And so, of course, now it's getting re-triggered. And like for me, that looked like my partner at the time like was taking all this space and I had a panic attack when at that point I was really working on regulating myself, and I maybe would have a panic attack maybe once a year. And it was very out of the norm for me, but it was just this cycle of me perpetuating it. And it was that pre-verbal wound. And so when we can start to learn how to feel safe in our body and learn to slowly titrate that expression, right? Feels too scary to say, hey, I'm feeling really anxious. You could just even say, hey, I'm feeling some type of way. I'm going to need some space and I'd love to come back in a little bit. Or I'm feeling a little bit anxious, but I'm okay. Like starting small. And once someone can start to like lovingly just like help you feel safe in that, that's when you'll feel safer to fully express yourself when those things are coming up for you. But that was a big thing that was really hard for me. And I can notice when I'm triggered, that can come up if I'm not careful.
The pre-verbal wound.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a really powerful way to describe this kind of conditioning, this imprinting that many of us experience growing up that can even happen before we have like a conscious,
Language.
logical, linguistic understanding of what is occurring. So I love
Mm-hmm.
that you named that because I think for many of us, this does go back to childhood. Not for everyone, but
Mm-hmm.
it can go back to some of our earliest memories, and those
Mm-hmm.
aren't always memories that we are conscious of. Trauma
Mm-hmm.
is stored in the body and comes up as a reaction, not a memory. That is
Mm-hmm.
a kind of paraphrasing of a quote from Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score. Trauma comes back as a reaction, not a
Mm-hmm.
memory. So your body will tell you the ways in which you have experienced trauma or been
Mm-hmm.
wounded without having someone to help you co-regulate and attune through and into that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that can get triggered in a romantic partnership when someone does pull away or doesn't
Mm-hmm.
ask for space and just takes it or switches up their energy. Like some of this
Mm-hmm.
can happen in early stages of dating. And, you know, a lot of what we're talking about too is communication. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether you're just starting to see someone or you've been in a relationship for a while, learning to open up and talk about your feelings is essential so you don't abandon yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
the more you abandon yourself, the more you're going to anticipate that somebody else will abandon you because you're projecting that fear outwards. You're already doing it to yourself. So why wouldn't somebody else do that? And
Mhm.
that plays a big role here too, whether it's them holding back or you holding back. Someone's got to bring the security to the table. You can't
Yes.
both just hold back and expect that the relationship is going to get healthier and more secure. Somebody has to open up. And it's oftentimes in the relationship coming to the brink where you're opening up about how you feel and you're worried that you're going to push them away or they're going to leave,
Mhm.
that you see actually that they stayed with it and they've been hoping that you've been wanting to open up or that you will open up. And
Mhm.
then you can actually deepen the connection from there. But a lot of it does come back to communication, I think.
Yes, it definitely comes back to communication. And I want to like piggyback onto that preverbal wound a little bit and like talk about it a little bit more. I don't hear it talked about enough. And so for me, what this looked like when that previous ex I was discussing, him and I were long distance, I just remember like my heart was just straight up on fire. And I knew, oh, he's just going back to Oklahoma. Like I'm going to see him in a month. But to my body and my brain, it felt like he died or we went through a breakup. I'm like, why is my brain feeling this way when he's literally alive and he's texting me and he's telling me that he loves me? And it was very, very terrifying. And no amount of logic or regulation tools were soothing it because it was pre-verbal. And so that pre-verbal wound needs like that co-regulation because it's this 0 to 3-year-old if you think about it. And so doing things like rocking, putting on soothing lullabies, it's ultimately like your body is in this panic, terror. And also that's why co-regulation from a therapist or coach can be deeply, deeply healing. And even just having someone, whether it's your partner or a friend or something, just like even holding your hands and just being like, I'm with you, I'm here. And also, like, if you're noticing that come up, we need to also practice being in our adult bodies because when we're anxiously attached, when we're fearing abandonment, we're not coming from our true adult self. We're stuck in those younger parts. So when you can consistently practice being in your adult body, this could be in such small ways. Like, okay, I notice I feel really anchored and in my adult body when I'm working out at the gym. I see how strong I am. Maybe I'm really proud and capable of myself because I went on this podcast or I got this promotion at work. In that moment, I felt in my true adult self. And so when we can anchor into those moments and pay attention to them each and every day, you're showing your body, hey, I am the adult self now. I am my own anchor. I can learn how to self-soothe, and it's a consistent practice. And when you practice this enough times, now when you're triggered, it's going to be much smaller and you're going to be able to come back into your adult self and you're not going to be so flooded and overwhelmed by these anxious parts that feel like they're taking over.
Very, very well said. A lot of truth there in terms of co regulation.
Mhm.
A lot of times I describe it as kind of writing over the pain of the past through new
Mhm.
experiences. You gather new data, you show your nervous system, your body that you can be safe, that you are in control, that you're not at the
Mhm.
mercy of everybody else around you, that you're no longer
Mhm.
that trapped child who is at the mercy of their parents or caregivers. And a lot of the distance that you described hits so deeply
Mhm.
at home with my experiences. Like, I
Mhm.
was in a long distance relationship for a year with someone, and it echoed the long distance relationship that I had with my mom growing up.
Mhm.
I lived in Maryland, she lived in Florida, and I
Mhm.
went from seeing her 2 to 3 times a month to 2 to 3 times a year at the age of 8 when she moved. And
Ooh.
you really do revert back to the age when you first experience that kind of pain and you're left alone in it. That's what is traumatizing about it. It's not the pain itself, it's being left alone with it. So if you can re-experience that, if you can revert back to that state and hold space for that version of you and for that pain and allow it to be there and in some ways to be expressed and to come to the surface,
Mhm.
then that's a part of it. It's also proving to yourself now that you do have a choice. You have autonomy, you have power, and
Mhm.
all of those things are deeply, deeply healing. I do want to ask about the nervous system a little bit more because
Yes.
that's central to the work that I do. I know we're
Mhm.
aligned,
Mhm.
philosophically in this because we talked about some of this on your show. But
Mhm.
what's happening in the nervous system when we keep repeating the pattern of dating someone emotionally unavailable, like someone who just won't commit or really isn't looking for the kind of relationship that we're looking for? In other
Mhm.
words, with people who are wrong for us. What's happening in
Mhm.
the nervous system?
In the nervous system, actually, this is a fabulous question. What's happening in the nervous system is it's looking for the familiar. So, the nervous system, we might think if I'm dating someone emotionally unavailable, that's wrong. That's a mistake. But, like I mentioned earlier about neuroception, it's looking for the familiar. Our inner child is also looking to put an ending on our childhood trauma through a similar experience, just like how Chris mentioned, and just like in my experiences. And so it's like our brain and our nervous system is looking for that familiar experience so it can timestamp it and say, this time is different. And now, because this emotionally unavailable person loves me, that proves that I'm lovable and enough. So our nervous system is actually looking for safety when it's looking toward this emotionally unavailable person. And I also wrote a post about this around chasing. Chasing gets a really bad rap, and consciously it's a habit that we don't want. But from a nervous system level, chasing is literally just showing, hey, I do not have enough safety internally, so I need to find it externally. I'm dependent on that emotionally unavailable person because I can't do that for myself. So we're dependent on that other person. And so that's really what's happening in the nervous system. And I just really like to reiterate that it's literally not your fault if you've been in this same exact pattern. But once we learn how to get into our adult body, anchor back into that, then we can reparent those young parts of us that didn't get the love, safety, co-regulation, and attunement. And we can then become that securely adult and securely attached parent that this younger part of us never received. Then what happens is we are no longer attracted to these emotionally unavailable partners. We start to feel literally repulsed by them. And your body will scream at you. And even for me, for example, I think I went on a date, this one date, like around last year. He was 15 minutes late. I mean, whatever, it happens. But as soon as I saw him, I'm like, something feels off in my body. And then I remember we were at this coffee shop and we were just sitting, talking. And I look up for just a second and he goes, "Oh, do you think that guy is cute?" Like he was threatened and jealous and was showing that. And he was opening up about his mental health and he was saying just like a lot of projections onto me. And it just like did not feel good. And he kept stating that he was afraid that he was making mistakes. He was afraid that he wasn't going to get a second date with me. And it was just like really repulsive. Like I could feel him and his energy. And it was just like, no, it was just all of it was giving very emotionally unavailable to me and what I was sensing. And a lot of these patterns just really made my body feel repulsed. And I told him as soon as the date ended, hey, I just don't think this is a good fit, like wishing the best for you. But that's an example of how like our neuroception will switch after we're doing this work. Because I have worked a lot on my fear of abandonment. But before then, I would have been like, oh, he can change. Maybe if I get him a great therapist, maybe with the
Hmm.
coaching tools that I share, he can use them and heal. But no, I was like, I just don't think this is a good fit. And my body told me first.
Mm, that point right there. That part.
Mhm.
Listen to your body. Obviously, you were picking up on some of the insecurity and the anxiety that this person
Mhm.
was experiencing. And while this isn't meant, to put that person on blast or to be a
No.
judgment or anything like that, of course, this is about assessing fit for you. And after the
Mhm.
work that you've done and also doing this work professionally, like,
Mhm.
I can imagine picking up on that is a big turnoff. Like, you want
Mhm.
someone stable. You want to
Mhm.
also be able to separate your work life from your personal and your romantic life. You're
Mhm.
already talking to people in your sessions and
Mhm.
whatnot about a lot of these same themes. So you don't then want to play that role in your romantic relationship too. So the more
Exactly.
work you do on yourself, the more you do become unattracted to this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And there is, I think, and I do want to unpack this a little bit more, but
Yes.
there is this period, I think, where you're in the in between. You're
Yeah.
realizing that you don't want to repeat the pattern. You don't want to keep dating emotionally unavailable people, but you also don't yet find the emotional availability attractive, or you're not
Mm.
turned on by someone who is readily, putting themselves out there and being vulnerable and
Hmm. Hmm.
expressing that they want a relationship and consistent. Like,
Hmm.
let's talk about that period, because I'm sure many people listening to this and watching can relate to that, right? And many
Hmm.
of them might even be in that space, the in between
Hmm.
of like, I know I don't want to repeat what I've done. And
Hmm.
I also might find some of this boring.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can you
That
talk
is
about that a
such,
little more?
yes, absolutely. That is such a great statement and question because a lot of people don't talk enough about that. They just talk about, oh, I was in this toxic relationship and now I'm in this healthy one. But it's a big shift for your nervous system. So, right, going back to the neuroception, your nervous system is going to find those unavailable people as safe, magnetic. You're going to have this
Magnetic. Yeah.
irresistible, yep, you're going to have this irresistible pull, right? And then with the safe and healthy ones, they're going to feel boring. So, what we want to do is we want to start to help our nervous system to feel safe in those things. So, like I talked about earlier, and what Chris and I were discussing, okay, expressing ourselves. How can we start to slowly share just a little bit more? Maybe we start to practice this with our friends, with our community, with our coworkers, just wherever that's appropriate, right? Sharing a little bit more about ourselves and expressing those parts of us. And then also going back to that nervous system regulation. If we're in survival, our body is wired for that and it starts to think that that is what we need. So what we want to do is we want to help our body feel safe in the calmness, feel safe in gratitude, in opening up our heart. As we do that more and more, it allows our heart to expand. It allows our body to feel even 1% more safe in that. What we need to do is like dissolve that resistance. And even something I utilize is called brain spotting. And I have a free masterclass on this. It's like the pull toward emotionally unavailable partners, and then processing that, and then looking at a different spot that helps you to feel safe and healthy love and your adult self. So, one of the somatic modalities I'm trained in is called brain spotting. And so brain spotting ultimately helps you to locate where your trauma memories are stored in your body and helps you to process them. And it does that through your visual field. So where you look affects how your nervous system feels. So in this masterclass, I guide people to find a spot in their room where they feel that magnetic, intoxicating, chaotic pull toward this emotionally unavailable person. And then we process on that. And then we go back to, okay, a time where I felt proud and capable and safe in my adult body. So then we're going back and forth between those two. And then as you consistently are doing that in this practice, it shows your body, hey, I actually want to stay at the adult self spot. I'm not actually attracted or want to keep going to this chaotic pull because my body is now registering as this is safe. And we need to do that enough times, helping our body to feel safe in expansion, in those positive emotions, in gratitude. And when I started to work on that pre-verbal wound, my heart was able to open up much more because even before that, gratitude was something I couldn't really tap into. Even just being grateful day to day was just very difficult. I felt even tension in my heart when positive or joyful things were happening. And so as I healed that pre-verbal wound that told me it wasn't safe and started to show my body, hey, it's safe to be in gratitude. It's safe to be in these expansive emotions. It's safe to be in my adult body. That's when I felt safer opening up more and sharing more of myself. I hope that answered
Say,
your question.
yeah, it certainly did. Yeah, I've never heard of brain spotting before. This is so interesting. Like, I feel like I want to run to my browser here and look that up. I love what
Yes.
you're talking about, though, and it definitely dovetails with things that I talk about here on the show and in my work.
Mhm.
about rewiring and that
Mhm.
repetition being so important. You have to
Mhm.
show the body specifically that the sensation of stability and peace and
Mhm.
calm is
Mhm.
okay for you to
Mhm.
experience. And to be able to access that and normalize it to the system is very, very important. Just because many of us learn to operate on all cylinders or all gears all the time, we actually learn through trauma to almost thrive under stress. And this is
Mhm.
where things like PTSD and CPTSD can come into the picture. That stress is playing a role in what feels familiar to you.
Mhm.
And part of the butterflies that we might get with someone, or that magnetism that
Mhm.
you aptly named earlier, is rooted in this. The
Mhm.
body becomes stressed, but we're mistaking that for safety because it has become such a familiar operating state for us.
Mhm.
Sometimes I almost look at this like a program or like software that your body, the hardware, is running.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if you want to have a different outcome, you need to update the software. And part
Mhm.
of updating the software means that you have to retrain the system to reorient towards actual safety and stability. And I think that's what you're talking about when you talk about brain spotting. Did I get that right?
You got it. You got it. 100%. Yeah, it's helping those safe and peaceful feelings feel okay in your body. And it's like also being like, okay, I can open my heart. I can also feel those happy, gratitude, joy states as well. And listen, stress is incredibly addictive. It's physiologically addictive. And so it can really trigger that when you're with these emotionally unavailable partners. And that has happened for myself too. Like I grew up with both my parents were very emotionally unavailable. My dad is a narcissist and my brother has autism. And so I was the parentified child. I learned that safety and the rug can be pulled out underneath me at any point in time. And so for me, it was a lot of deconditioning and it's something that I consistently practice every day is my regulation tools, is opening up my heart more and more and more because it's not something like just like with the gym. Oh, I go to the gym once and I'm going to be shredded. Absolutely not. You want to continuously show your body, hey, it's safe to be here. And adding on with the butterflies and kind of goes into your other question. A lot of people are looking for this spark. But really, that's your attachment trauma getting reactivated. Like, even if you have a very strong, like, sexual attraction to someone, like, you're like, I want to have babies with them. I want to get married. I want to have sex with them right now. The first, like, when you see them, that is literally your attachment trauma getting activated. And that's what happened in my previous relationship, one of my previous relationships. And woo, is that the truth?
Yeah, no, that
So, like, beware of that.
chemistry that people are seeking out. Ugh.
Hmm.
At the end of Needy No More, the book, I write that if you take nothing else away from the book, to let it be this, that you can't look for love based on butterflies or sparks
Hmm.
or chemistry. There's a lot of different
Hmm.
names for this, but that you want to look for the things that actually you didn't have.
Hmm.
The stability, the safety, the consistency, the peace, the mundanity of
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
You want boring. If you've been
Mhm,
through enough experiences of traumatic stress, you don't need more stress. You don't need more inconsistency. You don't need
mhm,
more of the roller coaster. You've already
mhm,
been on that ride again and again, and you know where it goes. It is a loop. I mean, the roller coaster is an apt analogy for this. You're going to go through the ride again and again. It will have a similar outcome because you're
mhm,
chasing someone who cannot or will not meet the kind of emotional depth that you actually need in order to heal the pattern.
mhm,
So that is a big part of this. I also think for folks, when they're in that interstitial phase that I mentioned earlier of
mhm,
almost holding both the attraction to the unavailability and then trying to reach for becoming attracted to availability, and you're holding both of those things and you're in the in between, there is a point at which you're going to have to make an active choice to reach for one over the other. And it's going to feel uncomfortable no matter how much conditioning or unlearning or retraining you do with your system. And I worked with a client a couple of years ago who exhibits this directly. And we
Mm.
went through the coaching program. She had been single for 6 years, like really, really looking for her partner, watching
Mhm.
all of her girlfriends around her get married, have kids,
Mhm.
being the bridesmaid and the person on the bachelorette and standing up there at the altar next to the person getting married, and just with each time feeling less and less worthy of it, like it would never happen for her. And towards the end of our work, she went on a date with someone that she normally wouldn't have even given a chance. And
Mm.
they actually ended up having sex on the first date. And then she came to me and she was like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm really feeling this. And I'm like, well, let's just square this away. You had sex with this person. You're clearly attracted to them physically. No. And she's like, yeah, of course. And so I started digging deeper with her, like, okay, well, what is it? What is it about this person that you're not sure of? He doesn't drive the kind of car that I thought my partner would. He's not as tall. He doesn't have the broad shoulders. A lot of these surface level things started coming up. And I'm like, well, obviously this didn't matter, when you were on the date. And we didn't talk about this in terms of things that were important to you when we were working through needs and values in the coaching program. So I pushed her and I said, you know what? I'm going to encourage you to give this person a chance. It's okay if you're a little bit apprehensive or you have doubt. You don't need to be certain about someone when you're dating them, especially very
Mhm.
early on. Like the whole purpose
Mhm.
is to get to know them and just ask, do I want to go on another date with them?
Mhm.
So she did, and then she went on another date and another date. And as she did, she still had the apprehension and the fear and the doubt. But over time, she also started feeling more comfortable and safer. And she had
Yeah.
more experiences of that stability. And I just encouraged her to talk to him about how she was feeling. Like, tell him that you're afraid. Tell
Mhm.
him that you haven't ever dated someone like him and that's scary to you. Share
Mhm.
it and see how he responds. And every time he was able to hold space for her, and it was beautiful to witness how she was able to let her guard down and really let some of that safety in. It did not
Mhm.
happen all at once. It was a
Mhm.
slow accumulation over the course of months, but 6
Mhm.
months later, they had said, I love you. They were talking about moving
Mhm.
in with one another. And fast forward a couple of years later, they're married. They've been married for over a year now. And she is so grateful that she stuck it out and stayed in there, because if she hadn't, she would have ruled out someone who has been so deeply healing for her.
Mm.
But you better bet she had a lot of experiences of doubt and worry and anxiety and fear. And I just want people watching and listening to this to understand that those things are going to come up as you're
Mhm.
learning how to let safety in and to
Mhm.
embrace this stability that someone can
Mhm.
offer you.
Mhm.
And it's not the presence of those things that indicates whether or not someone is good for you. You're allowed to experience those things and see over time that, wow, they really can be the kind of partner that I never thought I could have. She stepped out of the role of self-sabotaging and into the role of just exploring and being curious. And I thought that that was so beautiful to witness.
Wow, Chris, that is so beautiful. And I just love that because, of course, the nervous system is going to freak out, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because it's uncertain, it's different. And also, as you continue doing this work, you will naturally be repulsed by the opposite of emotionally unavailable or narcissistic people. Like your body will not allow it. But, at first, it might feel a little uncomfortable. It's completely new, but that does not mean that you shouldn't give it a chance. And that just gives a beautiful example. And even like with clients, because it's like they can feel so uncomfortable in that safety and feeling bored. It's like titrating that slowly on your own. without a relationship before that. Even like for me, I would start with, because I was very busy, 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 go, 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 to avoid what was happening in my heart, in my body. Just starting with, okay, can I just sit in silence for 1 minute? And then maybe in a month, or a few weeks, I can go to 2 minutes, and then slowly titrating that, feeling safer, just being with my thoughts, being with my body. And it's like just slowly showing our body, hey, I was in this for a minute and I didn't die. I went on this date and I didn't die. And it's like that's also a big protector part and defense mechanism to like fault find, like how she did it. That was really her nervous system trying to stay in the familiar.
Very well said. Yes.
Hmm.
And it's interesting to name that because when we're
Hmm.
in it, it just feels like "Ugh, what an ick. Like this is such a turn off. I don't know if I want to go on another date with this person. And look, I'm not here to tell anyone to continue dating someone that they just don't feel anything with. But if
Hmm.
you listen back to the story, you can hear how she had sex with him on the first date. Like, obviously, there was
Hmm.
something there. And, all of the things that she brought up were not things that had ever been brought up in our work prior to that. Like, we had
Right.
had probably 10 to 15 sessions together, and none of those qualities
Mm,
were ever named. That is the
there you
only
go.
reason why I encouraged her to stick it out because
Hmm.
it appeared to me as if she was trying to wiggle her way out of this. And the only way we were going to find out if this person could really be the kind of partner that she might need would be to
Hmm.
stick it out and to see how he responded to her feelings when she shared them. To not hold them in, but to allow for them to be expressed, like we talked about
Hmm.
earlier, and then
Hmm.
just to see, like, does this person have the capability of holding space for my doubt and
Hmm.
my fear and my worry? And if he hadn't have had that capability, then maybe the outcome would have been different. But
Hmm.
he was able to say, you know what? I get that. Like, I've been there. I want you to know you can always come to me and tell me how you're feeling. And what an important and beautiful experience for her to go through because that was writing over some of the pain of the past that she experienced with her own father, who was not
Hmm.
emotionally available. And she had
Hmm.
dated the person with the nice car and the broad shoulders and the beautiful head of hair and, the swagger and the money and all of those surface level things. And so I was able to say, like, is that really the path that you want to go down again? Are you going
Hmm.
to do that again? And let this person who has repeatedly shown up for you go? Are you willing
Hmm.
to release that person to maybe be with somebody else in the hopes of finding someone that has the car and the job and the money and the more vain aspects of what you might want in a partnership?
Hmm.
The ironic part is now that they're married, he has the job, has the car, is in a much better place than he was previously. So that's also why I was like, look, people can lose their jobs, they can lose
Yeah.
everything. Like, you
Yeah.
don't want to pick a partner based on that. But very, very interesting to witness there.
Yeah, how beautiful. And yeah, I know you talked a lot about this also in the beginning. It's like we need to show our nervous system proof that the past is over. This is different now. And having those disconfirming experiences are deeply healing. We need to do the drama healing and nervous system regulation and all the things, right? But we need to also show our body that this is different.
Amen to that. I will
Mm-hmm.
say, working with a professional, I think helped her tremendously. I think she would have left if she
Mm-hmm.
had been left to her own devices.
Yeah.
I was able to be a person that she could trust when she did not trust herself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that a professional can do for you if you're not able to really trust your own gut instincts. So, whether that's a
Mm-hmm.
therapist or a coach or even like a really close friend, recognize that someone else can help you to see this and work through those feelings, and you might need support in order to
Mm-hmm.
get there. But she did make the choice. She kept going on the dates. She trusted in exploring, and she brought a lot of
Mm-hmm.
curiosity and compassion to the table.
Mm-hmm.
She worked through her fear. She shared it. Like, this was not easy for her to do,
Mm-hmm.
but she
Mm-hmm.
kept showing up. She kept
Mm-hmm.
giving it her all, And it's not like she did this perfectly or anything. There were
Right,
moments
right.
where she didn't respond to him for a couple days and he's like, "Hey, are we still on for Thursday night?" And she's like, "Yes, yes, yes." So look, you don't have to do any of this perfectly, but it is important to recognize this is a choice that you will have to make. You will have to,
Mhm,
at some point, do the uncertain thing, do the thing that is opposite of what you're accustomed to doing, reach
mhm,
for the mundane, calm, boring person, and maybe stick it out to see if your feelings might develop for them after you're able to experience emotional security and safety with this person. And if it doesn't
mhm.
develop then obviously I don't want you to remain in a loveless or what
Right.
seemingly feels like empty relationship. But
Yeah.
if you can get there at least a little bit, in terms of developing attraction from the emotional connection, then
Mhm,
yes, yeah, that
mhm.
might be someone to continue exploring.
Yeah, it's huge. Like Chris said, it's not about forcing someone to be with someone healthy or stable. That's also coming from a trauma response, right? Like forcing yourself. But it's like that emotional connection, that physical connection was still there for her, right? Like she was able to develop it and feel safer in it. And yeah, it's huge. It's so huge. And it's like when we can take that leap of faith and be like, okay, what if I can trust this situation? What if I can trust myself that I can have my own back no matter what happens? Because the opposite of anxiety is not calm, it's self trust.
Yes, amen to that. I say that all the time.
Yeah.
As we wind down today's episode, I wanted to do just some rapid fire questions here. If
Yeah.
someone's in the midst of this pattern, what's one thing that you would tell them to do immediately right off the bat?
Vagus toning. So, vagus toning, we essentially have something called our vagus nerve, and it controls whether or not our fight or flight system gets turned on, whether or not we're anxious. And so, when we've been exposed and experienced chronic stress or trauma, it stops working as efficiently. So, then it gets stuck on. That's where this hypervigilance and chronic anxiety is stemming from. So, when we can learn to stimulate this nerve through vagus toning exercises, it helps our body to send those safety signals, not just to our brain, but to our whole body, because our vagus nerve controls so much. It controls our organs, it controls our breathing, it controls our immunity, so many things. And so that's one thing. If there's one thing to start with, it would be to do that.
Vagal toning, everyone. Yes, things like cold exposure, breath work, meditation, they can all help with this. Body movement, even there are eye exercises, eye
Yep.
movement exercises you
Yep.
can do to stimulate the vagus nerve. So there's plenty of opportunities to explore there for folks. What is one misconception about anxious attachment you wish more people understood?
A misconception about anxious attachment is you are not needy. I hate the statement like they're too needy or they're too clingy. It's like when we look at it, if someone is stuck in the desert for a month with no food and no water, if someone comes up to them and they give them junk food, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, thank you so much. You saved my fucking life." Like I was starving and about to die. And so with anxious attachment, and if you have a lot of needs, that does not make you needy. It's just literally a result of you not getting your needs met. And there's no such thing as needy. There's no such thing. So I just really wish that people could remove that from their vocabulary. And I know a lot of people listening have maybe been called that, and it's super wrong. And it's just also just not true. It's like, can we just have compassion for this inner child that's been starved of love for decades?
Woo, I'm snapping. Yeah. I mean, look, that's why I named the podcast, the book, the coaching program, All Needy No More, because you were never
Yeah.
needy. And we have to stop using that phrasing. Needy no more doesn't mean that you're needy. It means you never were
Hmm.
to begin with. And we shouldn't be using that to describe emotional needs, which are all relative because you're
Hmm.
relating to somebody else. So this is also
Hmm.
rooted in someone's capability or willingness to show up and meet those needs. Yes, 100%.
Hmm.
Okay. What's a daily practice or reminder you personally use to stay grounded?
I would say for me, okay, can I say two?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So right now I'm living in Colombia. I'm a digital nomad, and Chris and I were talking a little bit about this on the podcast and about his move and all the amazing things. And in Colombia, there's this like amazing hammock and it like rocks and it's outside on our balcony. And it's like, I love it. I love it so much. That's like one thing. A second thing is I do different somatic exercises to help me feel into my adult body. And then also remembering different times, going back to what I said earlier, like anchoring back into my adult self. When I do that and practice that, I feel so much more grounded in my body. So those are like two top things that I really, really love to do that are so imperative for me.
I love that. I mean, that hammock sounds incredible. That rocking motion is it's really soothing to the body
Yes.
and it does help to reset the nervous system.
Yes.
I just want to name that for folks who might not know that inherently. Last question here. What's one sentence you hope listeners really take away from this episode?
One sentence. You cannot change yourself through shame. You can only change yourself through love, meaning you can't shame yourself into changing yourself. The only thing you can do, it sounds so cheesy, but the only thing you can do is learn how to love yourself, because that's how we rewire our nervous system and our body and what we're attracted to, and just honestly feel better in ourselves and our bodies and the world and our relationships.
Yeah, you can't hate yourself into a version of yourself that you love. It doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
Many people try to do that because they learned through conditioning and modeling, usually by parents, that if they pressure themselves, if they criticize themselves, if they almost treat themselves like a workhorse, like run more, that they'll finally get where they want to go. And this speaks to something really important too, which is that healing is not always about doing. It's also about learning to be with yourself and to accept who you are as a result of the experiences that you have been through, to accept yourself as a foundation that you can build upon for your evolution. You can't reach for a new version of you without fully embracing who you are in this moment now. So, yeah, I echo that sentiment fully. All right,
Thank you.
Valerie, beautiful discussion today. Lots of really poignant, powerful stuff here. How can people find you and any resources that you want to share before we depart?
Yes, thank you so much. So, like I talked about earlier, I have a free masterclass all about breaking your attraction to emotionally unavailable partners that guides you through adult self anchoring, guides you through the brain spotting practice, and also guides you through tapping to heal that fear of abandonment and reparent that inner child. So, kind of everything what we went over in practice. So I would love for people to try it out. It's been very, very transformational for the people and folks who've joined. And then you can find me on Instagram. It's Heal with Val, HEAL with VAL. And then also, of course, my podcast that Chris was on. I would love for you guys to listen to that episode I did with Chris. It's the Anxiety Recovery Podcast with Valerie Rubin. And Chris, just thank you so much for having me on. It was so fun, and I love to dive deep into this.
You're very welcome. Definitely check out those resources from Val. Val, thank you so much again.
Thank you.